With the recent launch of the PlayStation 5, the PlayStation 4 can finally ride off into the sunset with its head held high. I'd argue that the PS4 has one of the best JRPG lineups of all time, easily going head to head with titans like the PlayStation 1 and the Super Nintendo. Now of course there still are quite a few good JRPGs still to come, like Ys 9, Tales of Arise, and Granblue Fantasy Relink. So this video will serve as a 2020 edition, if you will, and if any of these upcoming games blow us away, I might have to make a revised list. But for now, these are the 10 best JRPGs on the PlayStation 4 that you absolutely have to play. Don't forget to drop a comment with your favorite PS4 JRPGs, and if you like list videos like this, be sure to subscribe for even more, as we'll be covering Sony's handheld soon and then on to Nintendo. So let's get started. We couldn't have done this list right without including Persona 5 Royal. The game brought a stylish flair that caught the attention of the entire gaming community. I'll never forget the morning its debut trailer dropped and it trended worldwide. Also, when was the last time you remember someone cosplaying as a game's menu? Never. And that's just how incredible Persona 5 looked. Not only did the game's style command your attention, but the actual gameplay was ridiculously addicting. Its blend of snappy turn-based combat and compelling life sim aspects made you never want to put the controller down. What might be most impressive of all is that the game clocks in at over 100 hours on a normal playthrough, and players were happy to invest that time. If you can believe it, the Royal version added even more content. You have new side activities, a new playable character, and an additional semester to spend with your Phantom Thief buddies. Let's not forget that incredible music too. Whether it's more subtle tracks like Beneath the Mask, or the funky battle theme Last Surprise, every song hits so perfectly and easily makes up one of the best gaming soundtracks of all time. Oh, and if everything Persona 5 accomplished wasn't enough, Nintendo made Joker the first DLC character for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and Persona 5 isn't even on a Nintendo console. No matter what your opinion of Persona 5 is, you can't deny the impact it made on the genre and the industry as a whole. If you told me in 2013 that a NIER sequel would go on to become one of the most celebrated games of the generation, I would have laughed in your face. But here we are in 2020 and NIER Automata has done just that. Yoko Taro's bizarre yet compelling storytelling returns as we follow androids 2B, 9S, and A2 on their journeys to defend Earth and find meaning in their own existence. And just when you think the game's over, you still have several more playthroughs to go to experience the full story. What really propelled Automata above its predecessors though was its excellent combat system thanks to the action game masters at Platinum Games. Battles had a blistering pace to them with how fast you could move around the battlefield and the variety of abilities you could perform. You could be slashing away while simultaneously blasting enemies with your robot buddy, and of course slow things down with Platinum's signature perfect dodge mechanic. Some of the series' more quirky elements returned as well, like changes in camera perspective and various minigames like 9S's hacking. Let's not forget about the absolutely stunning soundtrack. Composer Keiichi Okabe really flexed his range in Automata with his mix of intense battle themes and more somber tunes that can only be described as otherworldly. Here's hoping this isn't the last we've seen of this series, because I'm ready for more of Yoko Taro's wild ride. After being seemingly left for dead on the PSP, Valkyria Chronicles made its triumphant return to home consoles with Valkyria Chronicles 4. The story follows Claude Wallace and his squad as they fight to avenge their hometown of Hoffen. In a similar fashion to the original Valkyria Chronicles, the story focuses on this small group of characters rather than a grand one of political intrigue. This focus really allows you to connect with the characters and feel a greater sense of why they're fighting. And when some don't make it back home, it makes it that much more heartbreaking. The series' unique spin on strategy combat returns with more varied objectives and new classes like the Grenadier. Because of this, missions are much better designed, discouraging you from just running to a spot on the map with your scout to get an easy win. The game's snow setting also gives it a unique aesthetic. The harsh winter is used to great effect not only in the story but also in combat, as snow often blocks your path. Admittedly, Valkyria Chronicles can be quite challenging at times, but for those willing to power through it, you're in store for one of the best RPGs the PS4 has to offer. Speaking of triumphant returns, the Dragon Quest series finally returned to home consoles after a 13-year absence, with arguably the best game in the series, Dragon Quest XI: Echoes of an Elusive Age. I think there's two main aspects that makes this game incredible. The first is its grand sense of adventure. Each town is so drastically different from the last. You have a more traditional RPG castle town like Heliodor, and then the cozy beachside village of Lonalulu. In my opinion, the best part of reaching each new town was exploring every inch of them to see what secrets you could discover. It made you feel like you were on a huge globetrotting adventure. The second reason why I think Dragon Quest XI is incredible is its cast of characters. Each one not only gets chapters of the story to really shine, but they all play off each other so well. It's this melding of wildly different personalities that just works. Sylvando is flamboyant yet encouraging. Jade puts up a tough front but is really caring deep down. The more that time has gone on, this game has just grown on me more and more. If you still haven't taken the time to play through Dragon Quest XI, make sure you do, because it's a true masterpiece. The Atelier series churns out games seemingly every year, but it finally broke through in a big way with Atelier RYZA. I think we all know why. But thick thighs aside, it's actually a great game in its own right. The story is one I think we can all relate to. RYZA doesn't want to waste her youth, so she gathers her friends to travel to an uncharted island. Here she finds adventure, new friends, and unforgettable memories. RYZA also changes up the formula quite a bit compared to other games in the series. Of course, alchemy mechanics and turn-based combat are still present, but each have their own twists. In the alchemy segments, you basically go down a tree to create more complex items instead of simply throwing them into a pot and making a better one. And the combat is much more fast-paced. It almost feels like Valkyrie profile in that you can combo moves with teammates in real time. It's a really fun system that keeps the battles exciting. Atelier RYZA truly feels like a big step up from its predecessors, and for fans that can't get enough, its sequel is right around the corner. One of the best pick-up and play RPGs of the entire generation is VIII LACRIMOSA of Dana. The feeling of movement and quickness of combat is just so smooth. In the game, you once again play as Adol Kristen, who's been shipwrecked on a mysterious island. The main crux of the game has you investigating the island, trying to uncover all of its secrets, while also trying to find all the other shipwrecked passengers. Adol also shares memories with a girl who used to live on this island thousands of years ago named Dana. Learning about her past and how she's connected to the island is one of the most intriguing aspects of the story. Like in past Ys games, VIII employs an action combat system in which you can swap between 3 different characters on the fly. Each has a certain type of attack that different enemies are weak to, which really gives combat a nice flow. Exploring the island has an almost addictive quality to it because of how smooth the movement and combat is. Bosses are exhilarating highlights as you'll need to master your dodges and utilize your team to the best of their abilities. They're all super fun and something I always look forward to. The music also deserves a special mention. It kinda peaks early with the track Sunshine Coastline that you're listening to right now, but all the combat and boss themes do an excellent job of getting you really pumped up. Oh, and if you haven't seen my sub 2-hour speedrun, be sure to check it out because it gets pretty wild. Speaking of Falcom games, let's move right along to one of my favorites this generation, Tokyo XANADU EX Plus. As I've mentioned in previous videos, Tokyo XANADU is basically if you took Persona and mashed it together with Ys combat. Seriously, it's pretty much exactly that. The game takes place in a Japanese high school, you'll travel to a parallel world to fight monsters that are slowly invading your own world, and spend time with your friends to level up their usefulness in combat. There's also cool side activities like a full arcade and skateboarding. I think what makes Tokyo XANADU work is its pacing. Much like Persona, you're constantly switching between a wide variety of gameplay types. For 30 minutes or so, you'll be battling your way through a dungeon, and then during your free time, you could be helping out a friend with their karate practice. What I like about Tokyo XANADU's dungeons is that it constantly encourages you to switch up your party as enemy weaknesses vary from dungeon to dungeon. And as wonderfully tropey as the characters are, I can't help but love them. You have the mischievous class president Mitsuki, the prodigy computer hacker Yuki, and your close friend that you grew up with, Sora. I think one of the more underrated aspects from an already underrated game is its soundtrack. It has a lot of synth pop tracks that just fit the vibe of the game so well. And in true Falcom fashion, the boss themes are all pretty great too. In my opinion, Tokyo XANADU EX Plus is the single most underrated RPG of this entire generation, and if you haven't gotten around to trying this gem yet, you really should. The Tales series had a bit of a rocky generation, but seemed to be on the right track with Tales of Berseria. Going against series conventions, the story is quite dark as you're on a quest for revenge as the badass Velvet. I won't spoil why you're seeking revenge, but let's just say it's for a good reason. On top of this, you'll be joined by a colorful cast of characters that make the adventure worth experiencing. The one standout party member is probably Magilu. She has such a flashy design and fun personality that you'll be hanging on every word she has to say. If you've played any Tales game before, the general structure should be pretty familiar. You'll travel between towns through interconnected zones, get to the next story beat, explore a dungeon, maybe fight a boss, rinse and repeat for about 40 hours. Thankfully, the fantastic action combat returns and it's just as good as ever. Battles are still regulated to small arenas, but the combat is snappy enough that it doesn't really slow down the pacing in any big way. A personal negative for me that the series needs to address badly is its dungeons. They are just so plain and feel like something you would find in an RPG Maker game. Boring dungeons aside, Tales of Berseria is certainly one of the system's best JRPGs and one you should definitely check out. After 13 long years since Kingdom Hearts 2, we finally got Kingdom Hearts 3. Was it worth the wait? Kind of, but is it still a fun game in its own right? Absolutely. You once again play as Sora, Donald, and Goofy doing battle against the forces of darkness. Admittedly, there is a lot of interstitial lore that might make you feel lost if you haven't played all the side games, but if you're like me and are just here for the Disney fun times, then you'll have no problem. After recycling a lot of the same Disney worlds game after game, Kingdom Hearts 3 finally introduces some brand new worlds to the franchise like Toy Story, Frozen, and Big Hero 6. I have to say, exploring them was pure magic. The worlds are much bigger than in games past and have the added verticality aspect. Almost every world has some giant wall that you can run up that gives it a really awesome sense of scale. I feel like the real showstopper in Kingdom Hearts 3 are the attractions. When certain conditions are met, you can call upon Disney attractions like the pirate ship, the teacups, or the splash run to aid you in battle. These flashy attacks end up happening quite often and can easily wipe out an entire group of enemies. Combat on a whole is much flashier than in past games thanks to a much larger variety of weapons and the ability to have up to 5 characters in your party at once. Waiting all these years may not have been worth it at the end of the day, but if you enjoy Disney films and a good RPG, you owe it to yourself to give Kingdom Hearts 3 a try. Last and certainly not least, we have possibly the most highly anticipated game of all time, Final Fantasy VII Remake. Does it have some bad skyboxes? Yeah. Are the plot ghosts dumb? Sure. But these few blemishes don't take away from what otherwise is an absolutely magical experience. As someone who holds the original Final Fantasy VII in high regard, this remake was one hell of a nostalgic rush. Seeing iconic locations like Midgar reactors and Aerith's home recreated in such exquisite detail was a pleasure to behold. I loved simply walking around these environments to soak up every little detail. 7 Remake also manages to reimagine areas in better ways than the original, like Wall Market. This is hands down the best chapter and worth playing the whole game just to experience. I think what surprised me most was how well realized all these characters were, not only in looks, which are pretty much perfect, but also their personality. Aerith always had a mischievous side to her, but never has she been better realized than in 7 Remake. My personal favorite character though has to be Barret. You can really feel why his fight against Shinra is so important to him, and the moments he shares with his daughter Marlene are truly heartwarming. The combat is also excellent. It's a great mix between action and strategy combat, constantly keeping you on your toes as you try to figure out the best way to stagger enemies for big damage. And we can't forget the absolutely masterful soundtrack. I hold Nobuo Uematsu's work in very high regard, and even I was shocked at how incredible these new arrangements were. And I'm not gonna lie, I teared up quite a few times because of the music alone. That's just how powerful it was. Sadly, we'll have to wait for this remake story to continue, but what we got so far with part 1 is a fantastic sign of what's to come. Now if you want a sneak peek at what JRPGs you can expect on this new generation of consoles, be sure to check out last week's video where I list out every JRPG announced for PS5 and Xbox Series X so far. And if you enjoy JRPGs and want more content like this, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.